Hello, welcome to the meeting of the Puss Insights. As promised, today I would like to talk to you about the characteristics of an evil person, of bad people. Because, yes, there are characteristics that have been observed to be prominent in those people who indeed exhibit negative, evil behaviors towards others. You see, in psychology, it has been known for about 100 years that there are key factors that distinguish people. For example, regarding intelligence, Spearman had identified what was known as the famous G factor, which is the unifying factor that somehow measured the level of intelligence of individuals, thus a unique factor that indicated a person's general intelligence. Recently, what has been termed the D factor was identified at the University of Ulm in Germany, publishing an article in the Journal of Personality on the dark side of personality, in which the researchers conducted a study lasting approximately 8 months, recruiting more than 2,180 participants, around 2,580 participants, approximately 2,500, and studying all those factors that could account for the wickedness of people. And what was very interesting is that they found 9 indicators that together, according to these researchers, constitute this D factor. So this factor somehow accounts for the fact that a person is indeed evil. I have already talked about the origins of wickedness, how it can somehow form within a person's life. And now let's look at the characteristics of a bad person, according to the researchers from the University of Ulm. The first factor is selfishness, which essentially revolves around oneself, focusing on one's own narrow view of oneself. Selfishness means that I come first, I am more important, I am at the center, leading to an excessive attention to one's own interests. A second characteristic that contributes to the D factor is being Machiavellian in nature, which includes the tendency to be manipulative, detached, and concentrated on one's own interests. This leads to the creation of a series of situations and processes, among other things, to achieve personal gain. So, for example, manipulation involves trying to change others' perspectives in some way, bringing them to one's own point of view, and creating situations that can lead to one's own benefit. It is a strategic activity aimed at achieving personal profit. A third characteristic is the almost total absence of morality and ethics. So it is precisely mores, the customs, thus attention to those who are like this, the social and cultural customs, therefore morality, and also ethics more generally, the concept of what is right. There is a clear disregard for these aspects. For what matters is my interest, my benefit. It is wrong, but who cares? It is not important. It is not something to be questioned in any way. A fourth element is narcissism, understood as an excessive admiration for oneself. People, for example, with this D factor, tend to perceive themselves as superior, as more beautiful, more intelligent, and more valuable They may report having always been seen this way, perhaps by their parents who have always told them, "But you are better, you are more capable, you are more talented." In short, narcissism is understood as an excessive admiration of oneself. Another characteristic is the perceived psychological superiority, in the sense that these individuals have a deep-seated belief that they are more intelligent, more capable, more talented, and therefore deserve a series of special treatments that are not reserved for others, to consider themselves better than others because they perceive it as something absolutely normal. They are used to being, as I mentioned. Sometimes they have even been educated to this, for example, by their own parents, which is precisely the feeling of psychological superiority. Perhaps they have come to this conclusion because they have been good at doing a whole series of things, so they have convinced themselves that in some way they deserve more than others because they are better. Another characteristic is psychopathy, understood here as an affective deficit, an inability to relate, and a deeply rooted lack of empathy, which means being unable to connect with others. One, an excessive impulsivity, a tendency to lie, and thus a profound insensitivity, the inability to truly feel for others, which places one right at the center of everything. Another characteristic is sadism, for which, for example, the researchers had these 2,500 people fill out a series of questionnaires, and one item specifically addressed sadism. So, for instance, it may make sense to humiliate a person in order to educate them right. This is clearly a sentence that has a sadistic undertone, an implication, you see, that in order to educate him, thus positioning myself as the one who must educate the other, it is acceptable for me to humiliate him, to put him in a deeply difficult situation. Here, people with this D factor tended to respond affirmatively to this statement, so it makes sense to do this. Therefore, a high level of sadism can also manifest in various areas of life, including family, relationships, sexuality, or even in professional work and beyond. Another characteristic is having strong material and social interests, in the sense of having a great need to be the center of attention and to possess a whole range of objects. Therefore, there is a great focus on wealth, on usage, on personal gain, and a strong emphasis on trying to obtain as much as possible in terms of social position, social recognition, and material objects. This becomes a fundamental objective. And then here it is, finally, the characteristic that they have defined as a feature of this D factor is precisely malevolence, understood here as the predisposition to do harm to others, which includes being aggressive, being violent, and subjugating the people around oneself, to steal, to humiliate. This is precisely the malevolence towards other people. Here, the researchers have put together all these characteristics, observing how they are closely related and thus constitute a single factor that is now referred to as the D factor. This personality factor distinguishes a wicked personality, a person who acts out of malice here. I have already explained in the video to which I refer about the origins of wickedness, how the development of this tendency of the mind, this personality trait, depends on many factors. Therefore, my invitation in this discussion is to see this as a characteristic, as a personality trait, while suspending judgment on its origin. As Baudelaire said, it is easy to judge an evil person, but it is extremely difficult to understand them, in the sense that the reasoning that leads that person to become what they are is extremely hard to comprehend. According to the researchers, for example, sometimes it is false beliefs that have insidiously entered their minds since childhood, such as "I am superior" or "I deserve more," and this may be due to the systems around them that have led them to believe this. Perhaps a firstborn son from about 50 years ago in a particularly wealthy family or not, who was taught from a young age that it was normal, that he was the one who mattered most in the family, so the daughters didn't count for anything. Even if they didn't study, didn't do anything, it wasn't important, because what mattered was him. He was at the center. He was the most important. You know, if this is an education received from childhood, it doesn't mean that the adult person will easily change this perspective without perhaps some positive social or cultural contribution to help them see things differently. Therefore, it is truly important, in my opinion, to suspend judgment. However, recognizing these characteristics, especially when we see them in ourselves or in the people around us, it is crucial to take actions that clearly allow us to modify this for personal well-being and for relational, collective well-being more generally. Anyway, here you go. For any further insights, I invite you to browse my YouTube channel or visit my website www.ericogamba.org. See you soon.